Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this special edition of Executive Coaching Uncovered. I'm Michael Moran, the Chief Executive of 1080, and today I have two very special guests, Neil Munz-Jones and Paul Donkers, and they're going to tell us all about Ikigai. But before they do, Paul and Neil, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My name's Neil Munz-Jones. So I'm wear a number of hats. My coaching hats include executive coach with 1080. And I'm also a licensed practitioner with the Ikigai Coaching Institute and have been working with Paul since 2016. I look back, time flies, Paul.
Thanks, Neil. My name is Paul Donkers. As you can perhaps hear, I have a bit of an accent. So I'm based in the Netherlands. Doing a corporate career up until I was 39, created my own firm at 39 and created the Ikigai Coaching Institute back in, well, actually when COVID started. So this was 2020, I believe. Is that correct?
Sorry, Paul. I did just miss that last bit. You were talking about your coaching career. Did you?
Yeah, no, sorry. I was just saying I launched the Ikigai Coaching Institute back in 2020. I think the year when COVID really broke loose. Yeah.
Okay. So we have no better a person than yourself, Paul, and maybe you would like to start to tell people what is Ikigai. It's had lots of press recently. Neil, you very kindly sent me a great article from The Economist. So, Paul, what is Ikigai?
Well, Ikigai, first of all, sounds exotic, I guess, to a lot of people. And I've been lucky to teach a little bit of Ikigai in Japan. And actually, it's something that comes from Japan, and it comes from the island of Okinawa, actually, where people live according to their Ikigai. But if you discuss with a Japanese person about Ikigai, they will not be able to give you a very clear answer because they say it's something very personal. It's something very subtle. It's for them. It's the reason why you get up in the morning, and that's basically still, kind of the definition we use at the institute. Why do you get up in the morning? And like I said, having said that, at the same time, for a Japanese person, there are much more subtleties to it than just that. But I think for our understanding, why you get up in the morning is the best way for us, I guess, to describe it.
Okay.
I think I would just build on that because Paul's got a nice sort of slide of a person getting out of bed going like this, and to me it's not just why you get out of bed in the morning. Maybe you can show there's a slide. It's you get out of bed in the morning, you go, yeah, it's going to be a good day, and so just move on to, I think it's the next slide. So Paul's got the slide on the left. He shows that. So it isn't just why you get up, but you go, it's going to be a good day, as opposed to, if you can see the image on the right, where you kind of pull the blankets or a pillow over your head and go, okay, it's another day, sort of thing. So,
okay. And so, Neil, since we're talking about coaching, tell me a little bit more about how you apply this philosophy of Ikigai and having a good day to your coaching practice.
I guess it's sort of there's two levels. So we'll come on. I think it'd be really interesting for Paul to talk a bit more about that next slide and sort of how do you figure out what your Ikigai is. Yeah. But I sort of use it at two levels. So one is sort of formal Ikigai coaching assignments where I work with my clients to help them figure out what is their Ikigai, and then critically, how do you implement it? But for me, it's also just a philosophy around being true to yourself, being authentic, finding out what are those things that really energize you, and building on those are your values, your strengths. And it's certainly, if I look back on my career, all the jobs I have the first 20 years were all things that I was good at, but I wouldn't say they were things that I loved. And that's for me the big difference. And what I love about Ikigai is it starts with your passions and what energizes you. So it might be worse. If we jump to the next slide, perhaps we could just get Paul to just talk a little bit more about. So, well, if that is what you get out of bed in the morning, why? How do you figure that out?
Yeah, how do you find your Ikigai, Paul?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And actually, what we started to do is translate Ikigai into these three circles, right? So one is you love it, you refer to this. Second is you're good at it. And third is reality check. And this for us is the way we have, let's say, interpreted and translated, the big Ikigai concept in Japan, more specifically Okinawa, to our Western world, right? So this is something I think we need to keep in the back of our minds. But we have found that working with these three circles kind of, a lot of everybody kind of immediately grabs what you're trying to say here. And, in living your Ikigai is, when you're able to kind of find the optimum, the bullseye, the sweet spot right in the middle where the things you love to do, things that give you energy, you found your niche, right? You found where you're really good at, where you really can differentiate yourself in this hyper competitive world. And when you're able to synchronize this with the outside world, right? Where reality check, where you need an economic engine, where we are dealing with a climate crisis. So the things that you're going to do, how are they impacting the outside world? And we have found that for many people, they find this model and working, on this systematically. That also to your question, Michael, I think, working systematically through do you love it questions, the methodology, the you're good at it questions, and synchronizing this finding with reality check will for many lead to an epiphany of where the opportunities for them are.
Mm. And I think, so building on that, what I've found with a lot of my Ikigai coaching clients is they're often in the box. They're good at it, and it meets the reality check box, but they don't necessarily love it. And so the bit that overlaps is called rich but feeling empty. And I think that's, a lot of people who get to a certain stage in your career where you want a bit more from life than just doing the corporate job. And I had a really interesting experience just this weekend. I was at a 60th birthday party, and all of the guests were either retired, semi-retired, or talking about when they were going to retire. And then they said to me, Neil, so when are you going to retire? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to retire. I don't have any plans to retire because I love what I do. And that's, for me, the difference. You get to a certain stage in your career where money's not everything, but you still have a purpose. And so I've found that, as long as I'm loving what I'm doing, I have no plans to retire. And one of the things that struck me, and you can maybe talk a bit more about this, Paul, was am I right in saying in Okinawa they don't have a word for retirement?
Correct. Well, at least in the dialect, in the local language, yes.
So they know what their Ikigai is, and they keep doing it. And the interesting, we didn't sort of explain that this Okinawa, it appears in the Dan Butner Blue Zones, and it's all about the living to be 100. So there's some interesting. There's a Netflix documentary about that. We got a link later on if people are interested. But it's this sort of living a longer, more fulfilled life, and that is around knowing what your Ikigai is.
So guys, if I could be practical, because I get the high level about loving it, and having mission and purpose, and doing the things that you're good at, because that sits very comfortably with me and what we do at 1080. But can we be slightly practical about, so what are the questions you would be asking as a coach, or as an individual should ask myself, in order to establish what it is I really love and what it is I'm really good at? Can we give me some insight in coaching question terms, how you would get that information?
No, you want to pick that up, or you want me to pick it up?
Okay. One of the questions I find very interesting to ask people quite early on is around what gives you energy and what drains your energy away. Yeah. And that's a really interesting one. And often going back to sort of childhood, what are the things you love doing as a child? Because often once we get into a career, we sort of suspend some of those things that we were really good at and loved and gave us energy, because we're now got to do a job. And so getting people to tap back into the things that energize them, the things they love doing as a child, I think are really good. And then the other area I like to probe on is around values. So kind of, who are you? What are your character strengths? Those sort of things, and getting them to then think about, when you loved something you were doing at work, what exactly was it? And then trying to see what are the patterns, what are the things that you're doing when you're at your best at work.
Paul?
Yeah, so what we actually did is trying to give you a bit of perspective on the methodology. Is we've created a set of approximately 60 questions, approximately 20 for you love it, 20 for you good at it, and 20 for reality check, that kind of covers everything, varying from very more philosophical questions, high level, to extremely pragmatic questions, where people need to synchronize their ideas with, what is the economic engine, etc. And what we are doing as Ikigai coaches, we kind of go through the questions together with our clients, some of the examples Neil just shared. But what we go looking for is, when people leave things open, or when we see, paradoxes where they speak against themselves. And what we see in reality is that oftentimes, through the process and going through the questions together with the clients, it oftentimes leads to a bit of an epiphany for themselves. So they kind of, start connecting the dots themselves. And if they do not, we actively start to assist them to activate it. And the rhythm of the program, I think, helps them to have the impression that, the system brings them at the end to finding Ikigai, which is not always the case, that it's just a road from A to B, but oftentimes it is. And if it's not, we are there to help them actively try to connect the dots.
There's certainly a lot of, if you do it with people who've been in their careers for a while, because I do it with students as well, but for people who know, there's a lot of assumptions about I should do this, I need to do that. And so it could be quite interesting to go and unpick some of those assumptions around what we all feel we ought to do, as opposed to what we would really want to do. And it's interesting because, Paul's now got 3 different versions. He's got the student version, the standard version, and the legacy version. And so for the standard version, it is often about reconnecting with those passions and things that you love, because you're now at a point in your career where maybe you don't need to keep being on the corporate treadmill. But then for students, maybe haven't got all that baggage. I've done it with my 2 sons, and it was lovely to see they're both doing their Ikigai, and they love their first jobs a lot more than I certainly enjoyed my first job, which I was good at, but I didn't love. But also I did it with one young lady who came in with literally 25 things she'd already done, incredibly creative, and the process just helped her get a bit more structure, and we boiled it down to 3 things, and she then went and did a master's and is now on in a career with sort of digital animation. But it helped to give a bit of structure to this incredibly creative mind.
Yeah, so I think it's both systematic, but it also allows for a lot of room, I think, for the coach and the client to kind of discuss it and boil it down, like Neil says, to the essence at the end of the program.
Okay. Now, Neil, I was using your son as a reference the other day, because you were talking about him having an interest in stats. Yes. And interested in sport. So I'll let you tell the story, but obviously he was able to combine the 2. But that does bring me to reality check, because I love football. I like playing it. I was quite good at it. But at my age now, I'm not going to make a living out of it. So how do you bring this reality check into the coaching? Because certainly when I work with people, particularly when they have a passion, that sometimes gets in the way of commercial judgment. Can you just tell us a little bit more how you handle reality check?
Yeah, it's a very good and fair question, and I did a sort of version of Ikigai 20 years ago when I hadn't heard of the concept, but I was out of work and looking to do something, and I thought, I'd like to go into sport because I love sport, but the commerce of sport, and the reality was I concluded with 3 young children and a mortgage, going all the way back to the beginning. And I think a lady said to me, well, the best you're going to get is you might be able to run a golf club. And I had to sadly conclude that wasn't going to cut the mustard. So the reality check is a mix of financial things, location things, and have you got can you realistically do this? So it's it's sort of like it's not the process isn't like a computer where you put all the things in and press answer and it spits out your Ikigai. It is a sort of iterative process, and there will be times where you have to kind of rein back in some of the passions, but I think that's part of the skill and the fun of doing it with one's coaches is to kind of, it's an iterative thing where you work it out together and get to a point where there is this, you've got your passions, you've got your skills, but it does meet my other requirements. So it would be lovely if you could just fill the form out and like a psychometric profile, and it goes, the answer is you're in this box. But I think there's also the lovely thing about Ikigai is there is no box. Everybody's Ikigai is unique. And as I alluded to with these 3 different stages of Ikigai that Paul talked about, it can evolve over time as well. So I don't know, Paul, do you want to talk a bit about your views on, do we only have one Ikigai, or does it evolve, change over your life?
Yeah, I'd love to talk a bit about that. But I also wanted to build a little bit on what you were just saying, Neil. I think this is also where we, as Ikigai coaches, play an important role in the process. And I've been lucky to work with a couple of thousand people, over the last 3 decades, one-on-one in, all kinds of coaching situations, and without, making people too much into caricatures. But there are many that are almost too practical in their approach when they are on the crossroads in their career. And there are many that stay too philosophical and too high level. And you will quickly find out when you go through the Ikigai program together, whether somebody puts more emphasis on the, thinking part or puts more emphasis on the practical part. And I think this is where we as coaches play a critical role to kind of, give some guidance to a person to emphasize one or the other, because you need a holistic, pragmatic approach, I think, to be effective in a program like this. Sorry, Neil. The question was again?
Well, just about these 3. Do you only ever have one Ikigai and that's it? You're just set in stone, can it evolve?
Yeah, no, exactly like you were just saying. I think Ikigai is something like a daily purpose, but let's not make it too big, right? It can be very small. I have a neighbor here. Literally, he's 86 years old. And he's still, pruning every day and harvesting some honey and selling it in his house, and that can be, living your Ikigai. So Ikigai is something fluid, I think, throughout your life. Things change, your situation changes, and one of my learnings is that we have started now with Ikigai programs, for students starting at 17 who are, been able to self-reflect, and our oldest coachee has been in his 70s, trying to build up a more portfolio career. So I believe that approximately, and especially in today's labor market, every 4, 5, 6 years, you get to a new crossroad where you kind of, fine tune again, perhaps where you want to go next. What does Ikigai look like? Am I still in the center, or how do I move back to the center? So that's the way I look at it.
I suppose I come back to the and help me. You say that one, or there's more than one, because surely for certain people this reality check means there are paths they can't go down, despite loving it and despite having a level of competence. As Neil just said, financial reasons, family reasons. So tell me more about how I can have multiple Ikigais and how I manage them.
I mean, there's an element. I think we can have it isn't just about the work that you do. So so I've sort of kind of worked with people where maybe they're in transition from what they've been doing into a new one, and it may be they need to continue a lot of their work. So I certainly talk to a lot of people who leave the corporate world and go and set themselves up as freelancers, and they have a passion of something they love. Yeah, coaching is a good example where it's quite a challenge to make a full-time career and earnings out of coaching at the beginning. So I do coaching and consulting, and I've been coaching now for I think 6 years, but that I still more of my revenue comes from consulting, which I would put in the bucket of I'm good at it and I don't dislike it. I like it, but I don't love it. And so, I will often sort of talk with people around how do you do both, and maybe you can then dial up your passions, and maybe at the beginning they're just hobbies, something that you start and develop, and then the interesting bit with the reality check is as you go through life, money starts to become less of a driving factor. So whereas 20 years ago when I went freelance, I still had to earn money because of big mortgage and kids to fund. Now I'm at the point where the mortgage is nearly paid off and the kids are not on the books anymore. That suddenly money doesn't become as big an issue, and therefore I can do a bit more about my passions. So it isn't this sort of all or nothing, and as Paul said, it doesn't have to be your job, it can be a daily purpose, so that you can do when I do my consulting, I do it, I like it, I'm good at it, but I really look forward to the coaching that I was doing. And that was one of my kind of light bulb moments early on in my coaching development, when I was doing my sort of training hours, and one morning I got up and I'm really looking forward to the day, and I had a morning full of writing slides and doing analysis for a consulting project, which I was like, this is fine, I'm gonna earn some money for that. In the afternoon I was doing some pro bono coaching of a young vicar in a church, and I was really excited about that. I was so really looking forward to that, and so it was a sort of nice combination, and I think it helped me to do the consulting, because you got to do that, you got to earn your money, but you also have an element of something that hopefully is building that I'm much more passionate about.
And Paul, am I right to think we focused largely in this session on sort of careers and coaching people, but it's also Ikigai is more of a lifestyle. Can you tell us a little bit more about things outside of this coaching arena?
Yeah, but I think it connects to Neil's point, and I just wanted to show you a couple of books I'm currently taking a deeper dive in, because this, I think, connects to something that is happening in our society, especially with let's say older people. Is the portfolio life. I'm reading a book called Halftime. I'm reading a book called Second Mountain. So what you see is more and more that, especially people who were in professional, that they're not really looking to retire anymore. They're looking for a second half of their career, or a third half, if you will, where they start giving back, that they're thinking legacy, that they're starting to do things that are even closer to their heart, like Neil was mentioning. So I think it's important, if you wanted to take a deeper dive into Ikigai, and Neil will also share a couple of links later on when we are almost finished. But I think Ikigai is much more, what is your holistic life? What does your life look like? It's not only work, right? Almost, I think at the essence, Ikigai is almost where. I was just reading an article before we went onto this call about a lady who has a B&B in Frankenhoek in South Africa, close to Cape Town, and she said something like, we live above the shop, and it's something like, it's completely integrated into your life when work, and that's where, and that's, I think, a different approach than going to work and being at your desk at 9 and taking the subway home at 5 again. I think Ikigai is about a lifestyle.
And that certainly resonates with me. And I think it's Confucius says, and to echo Neil's point, find a job you love and you'll never work again. And it isn't just about work. So I think now we're coming up to 24 minutes, guys. So what I normally do at this stage on a LinkedIn Live is say, so what are the key messages you want to send out to the audience? What are the key things? And so key things of how do you live an Ikigai life?
Good. How does one summarize that? I think it's about connecting the dots, spending a bit of time reflecting, and you kind of you get out of it as much as you put into it. So certainly, you know, as our role as coaches, if our coachees have not really dug deep and thought about their values, their passions, those energizing things, and then you get your list of strengths, and then it's this overlap of how do I get something. So back to that story of so both my sons that I've helped with Ikigai, they work in the sports industry, but they both if you ask for their passions, it would be sport. Neither of them are good enough to earn money playing sport, but they think, well, let's see if we can get a job in the industry of sport. But one of them is more creative into marketing. The other one, the one you alluded to, Michael, is very good at the maths and the data and stats, and so they're doing very different jobs, but that tick a similar box of you love it, so they're passions. But then they've thought hard about, but what am I really good at to get that overlap, because otherwise, I think let me just you end up with this being happy because you're doing something you love, but you're poor because you can't actually make a living out of it if it doesn't tick the box. So I think it is, reflecting on what do you love doing, what gives you energy, and then what are you good at, and then doing how can I combine that into something? And if it isn't a job, that's okay. How do I find other ways to build it into my daily life?
Good advice, Neil. Paul, final words?
Well, Ikigai is a great concept, but we know, there are libraries full with great concepts. At the end of the day, you have to do it yourself. Don't scratch the surface. I think we have one life to live, and it's up to you to kind of explore or unleash the value that is hidden in Ikigai, for instance. But whatever you do, start moving and keep the initiative on your side instead of, depending on an employer or whatever outside the circumstances.
Okay. And I'm going to finish, Guy, on and I like your slide about waking up in the morning. How do you feel? My mantra to our listeners is to, when you do wake up in the morning, make sure I'm going to enjoy this day. I'm going to enjoy this day. So thank you, everybody, for coming on the Ikigai LinkedIn Live. Thank you in particular to Paul and Neil for sharing your thoughts. And I hope you've enjoyed the session.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Michael.